Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the biggest boxing event of the year this Saturday. Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. I think it's only fair that we start talking about this event by having a look back at the first one. Obviously the first one, it's been a big talking point leading into this fight. Daniel Dubois and his team continuously reiterating the fact that it was not a low blow, even though it is a low blow. It goes below the belt, and Alexander Usyk is allowed to take his time and get up, and he probably was hurt. There's no doubt Usyk felt that punch, but you got to make sure that you land him in the right spot, or it means very little. Usyk goes on to stop Daniel Dubois in the ninth round. And at the end of that fight, I think lots of question marks were made over Daniel Dubois and whether he really had the guile, the ability to go on and become any type of heavyweight champion. And I think we've seen a resurgence from him, his personality, his demeanor, and his boxing acumen very recently, of course. So let's start with talking about Alexander Usyk. Now, this is probably the biggest talking point when it comes to Alexander Usyk. No one doubts his ability. It's the age thing. I feel like whenever you get into a discussion, can Dubois beat Usyk, not much is said apart from Alexander Usyk is 38 years old. That is old, but it's not the oldest that we've seen. You go back to one of the greatest heavyweights ever, in George Foreman. He was winning it at, 46? I still think 38 is a doable age, especially when Usyk doesn't seem... Well, I can't remember a time in his career where he was sort of injured continuously. Like, we've never seen Usyk out of the ring because of a continuous wrist injury or a continuous knee injury. And even as he's gotten older and around this age of 38, we haven't seen any sort of physical breakdowns. Now, I'm not going to dispute the fact that a lot of the time age can hit you like a fucking train, and all of a sudden that age becomes apparent, and it just takes away what you have in an instant. We've seen it with plenty of boxers, but to be honest, I just don't see it in Alexander Usyk that the age is going to be the factor making this fight. Now, Alexander Usyk, he's possibly the greatest heavyweight of our generation. I'm talking probably the best heavyweight since Mike Tyson, in my opinion. And I would put him probably very close to top 5, if not in my top 5 of heavyweights of all time. Obviously, a lot of probably recency biased in that. Obviously, I didn't watch Mike Tyson, George Foreman. I didn't really see much of Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. I didn't see many of these great heavyweight fighters, Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano's live. It's all sort of, retrospective the way I viewed all those fights, but I have watched a lot of those fights. And I think Alexander Usyk could go with any of those fighters. Honestly, I think he could go with any of those. You're more than welcome to dispute me in the comments. I will be down there after this video. Let me know if I'm overstating Usyk. But we're talking 23 professional wins, 14 knockouts, 0 losses, a 2012 gold medalist in London, undisputed cruiserweight world champion and undisputed heavyweight champion. And he's about to become 2-time undisputed heavyweight champion if he can beat Daniel Dubois. And then you look at his wins. We've got 2 wins against Tyson Fury, for someone who for a long time was the best heavyweight in the world. He beat him twice. He beats Daniel Dubois, knocking him out, someone that is now fighting for an undisputed championship. He beat AJ twice, another Olympic gold medalist and world champion. He beat Chisora, another really high-rated fighter. And then we look at his cruiserweights, and he beat Tony Bellew. He destroyed him. Like, he knocked him out in, round 8? And he just destroyed someone that I rate very, very, very highly. I think Tony Bellew is an outstanding fighter, and probably at least, I think, top 5 British fighters of all time, if I'm being honest. Murat Gassiev he beat, Briedis he beat, Marco Huck he beat, Michael Hunter he beat, Umchunu he beat, Glowacki he beat. And all of these fights that I've listed, I believe, have all almost been title fights. At least all the cruiserweights ones were. All of them title fights. That is unbelievable, the amount of champions that he has beaten, and he hasn't lost to one yet. And when you go through that list, there's a few knockouts. Lots of them are decisions, but lots of them are unanimous decisions. Obviously, there's the split decision with Tyson in the first one. There is a split decision with AJ in the second one. No, it was I'm confusing myself. But he gets one split decision with AJ. He gets a majority decision with Briedis, and everything else is clearly a win to Team Usyk. I think Usyk's boxing IQ, footwork, skill, speed, and the fact that he's fought basically all his heavyweight bouts as a very small heavyweight. And no matter the style he comes up against, he finds a way to beat it. We saw it with Tyson Fury. If you compare the first Fury to the second Fury, Fury couldn't outbox him. He couldn't use his speed. He couldn't even use his power against him. He ends up deciding, I'm going to put on a heap of weight and use my weight against him. And it still didn't work. And we've seen all types of styles. We've seen AJ, that really tall, long, athletic fighter, couldn't beat him. And I think that ability to not have one way of beating someone is what makes him exceptional. And I think that is the clear comparison when we discuss him versus Daniel Dubois. When we talk about Daniel Dubois, you probably just think power. He has got youth, he's got power, he's got speed. That is probably that is some big things in boxing. But the other thing is, with that power only works if you can land. And with someone as good defensively and with footwork like Usyk, you're going to have to fight very well to land those punches on him. Daniel Dubois, 27 years of age, 22 wins, 21 knockouts, 2 losses, both coming by way of stoppage. I think we've gone past that stage of Daniel Dubois gives up when it gets hard. I mean, the way in which he lost to Joe Joyce, it didn't look great. I mean, he basically got stopped by a jab. I know he had a fractured eye socket, but it didn't look great the way in which he lost that fight. He loses to Usyk, getting stopped in the end after looking quite alright at the start, and he lands that blow that they keep calling an illegal blow. But he then goes on a bit of a run of beating Kevin Lerena, Jarrell Miller, Philip Hrgovic, and Anthony Joshua. It's some good wins. There's some good wins in there. I mean, his resume in no way, shape or form compares to Alexander Usyk's, but it is the start. At 27 years old, it is a good start of making yourself a legacy sort of heavyweight fighter. I mean, we're talking about someone that's got 11 years still to go, and he's got some big names on it, and he could, at 27 years old, become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. That is massive. He has built himself after some stumbles early to become this fighter. And the one thing I will say about Daniel Dubois is I think he, from what I've seen online, some of the photos, some of the videos, he is confident. He's confident, and I think he's put his body in the best physical shape. If you've looked on his Instagram, you will see he looks unbelievably fit. I didn't think he was going to get himself in that good a shape for this fight. I think he knows that the only way to beat Alexander Usyk is with power and speed. Obviously, he could come into this fight 20 pounds heavier than he normally and really just put all his chips in power hitting. But he knows that he's got to be able to go 12 rounds fit enough and to be able to be quick enough to hit him. Now, where this fight I think will be won and lost is within the first 5 rounds. I think will show us a lot. I think if Daniel Dubois is composed and he's trying to box Alexander Usyk before landing a big shot, this could be a big night for Daniel Dubois. I think if Daniel Dubois goes in there and from minute one is trying to land that big shot, he's going to get outboxed and outclassed by a mile from Alexander Usyk. Does Daniel Dubois win this fight? I think if they fought this 10 times, Dubois wins twice. And I think that's enough percent for Daniel Dubois to come in here and win that fight. And I say that because I do think the age does play a role. I don't think it's a big role, but I do think it's a role. I think the youthful confidence, exuberance from Daniel Dubois is menacing. I think the shape that his body's in is dangerous. And I think that he did land on Usyk in the first fight, and Usyk struggled to take it, and he probably got away with it being illegal. If Daniel Dubois can let a shot off like that in this fight, it could be trouble for Alexander Usyk. Saying that, I think we've questioned Alexander Usyk every time he's got into one of these fights. I think we questioned him the first Tyson Fury fight. I think we questioned him the second Tyson Fury fight. We questioned him against AJ. We always question, does Alexander Usyk have it against this? Like, is he going to be found out? Is this going to be the first time he's found out? And to be honest, every single great heavyweight at some point in their career does become found out. They eventually get old and they get that first loss, or they get the worst loss, the loss that sort of sends them around the corner that says, your time here at the top is done. My final prediction for this fight is, I think Usyk outboxes Daniel Dubois, and I think he wins a decision. I don't think we're going to see Daniel Dubois stopped. I don't think Daniel Dubois is a good enough boxer to stop Alexander Usyk. This fight, if Daniel Dubois is to win it, it will be a changing of the guard. And I just, as much as I like Daniel Dubois, I'm probably sitting the same way as I sat when he went into AJ. I just can't see Dubois winning the fight. And I think I've said that recently about most of his fights, and every single time he's done it and he's gone through it. And that AJ one, to perform like that in Wembley Stadium is going to build him a lot of confidence coming into this fight at Wembley Stadium. I think losing to Alexander Usyk the first time will have given him a wealth of experience. I just think that Alexander Usyk is one of the greatest heavyweight fighters. And unless that age takes an effect on him, I think Alexander Usyk wins this fight. I did take into note, I think Daniel Dubois, when he fought Anthony Joshua, he sort of had this confidence and this stature about him. And he was really loud and vocal with Anthony Joshua. Now, he's doing the exact same thing here against Alexander Usyk. The only difference is in this fight, Alexander Usyk does not bite. When we saw him talk like that in the face-off and in that round table with Anthony Joshua, the one led by Adi Oladipo and DAZN, we saw Anthony Joshua that really sort of got, I wouldn't say emotional, but he bit back. He stand up, challenging him, really sort of giving into these games. Daniel Dubois stood with a face-off against Alexander Usyk, yelling and screaming in the man's face, and he was stone cold just standing there. And we saw that, it didn't work for Tyson Fury when he did it with him. I think the mental side, Daniel Dubois was able to possibly get in the head and really sort of make Anthony Joshua a little bit more emotional. He's not going to get that against Alexander Usyk. There will be zero emotion from Usyk. And I just wonder whether that has any effect on Daniel Dubois' confidence. He will go and sit down and say, or think to himself, I just did all this and the man didn't react a little bit. Can we see a bit of a dip in confidence? Can we see maybe Daniel Dubois become a little bit too emotional for his own good, or a little bit overconfident, and Usyk's just there thinking to himself, you just keep adding fuel to the fire, because when we said in that ring, you're going to be finished. I don't know. These are just some of my thoughts. My prediction is Alexander Usyk to win by decision. Let us know in the comments below what you think is going to happen in this fight. Who do you think is going to win? What do you think the factors that are going to play heavily into this fight are? And don't forget, we do have quite a good undercard. I think this undercard's probably not being done justice. We've seen such good fight cards, even if we look back from 5 days ago at the Louis Armstrong Stadium. That fight card was stacked, and all these ring cards have been stacked. This one here, it's probably underwhelming, but if you put this card together probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you were probably very happy with it. We have Lawrence Okolie taking on Kevin Lerena. That's for the WBC Silver Heavyweight title. Obviously, Lawrence Okolie and Kevin Lerena, both two former cruiserweight champions. Lawrence Okolie more recently moving up to heavyweight, I believe. Lerena, I'm not a massive fan of Lerena. I don't think he's overly that great. That's probably sounding very disrespectful. I think we saw him sort of get caught out when he fought Daniel Dubois. He lost quite he lost to Justice Hooney, but he probably could have very well almost won it in the end when he stumbled Justice Hooney. I think that fight, does that fight look better now after we saw Hooney fighting Wardley? Probably, but at the time it was probably more disappointing for Lerena than it is now to think about. And Lawrence Okolie, he's had a few fights recently, but his biggest fight was against Chris Smith. That was his last fight at cruiserweight, and he lost that. So if I was to make a prediction on this fight, I would probably tip Lawrence Okolie. I think Lawrence Okolie's just got a bit more to him, and I think he's the better fighter, so I would say Lawrence Okolie to beat Kevin Lerena. We also have Daniel Lapin versus Lewis Edmondson for the IBF Intercontinental Light Heavyweight title. Edmondson, most people remember from having that great fight last year and beating Dan Aziz. This is probably a very good fight to start the night. Obviously, it's another Brit versus a Ukrainian. A bit of foreshadowing for what the night holds. We also have Vladislav Serenko versus Solomon Darkers in heavyweight, and Artem Ahmed versus Ezekiel Gregors in super lightweight. That rounds out the main card for Fight Night. Very, very excited about this one. I'll probably change my mind on who's going to win 3 or 4 times leading up to this fight, because I do think there is a lot in this fight. But I feel like we say that every time Usyk fights, and there's always one common denominator, and that is Usyk's hand at the end of the night gets lifted. I do expect us to see a 2-time undisputed Alexander Usyk, further cementing his legacy, and I would expect to see Alexander Usyk's hand raised and Joseph Parker versus Alexander Usyk at some point next year. It will be interesting if Alexander Usyk retires, stays on, no matter the result. I would love to see Joseph Parker get a shot at the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship of the World, because I think he deserves it. I think he should be in there instead of Daniel Dubois, but that's just my opinion. I hope he gets that opportunity, but I wouldn't begrudge, and I would probably be very happy for Alexander Usyk if he wins and retires undisputed. I think he deserves it. And I think we're talking about one of the greatest fighters we're ever going to see in Alexander Usyk. Maybe that's going a bit too early. Maybe I'm overlooking some of the former greats, but I think he's exceptional. I think he's exceptional fighter. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya!